Hey guys, All Sports 83 sporting another video at you. And today in this video we're going to do something just a little bit different. We've been talking a lot about NASCAR 21 Ignition over the last couple of days. We're going to be doing that moving forward as well as the game is released, and I'll do some content. But we're going to take just a little bit of a break from that. And I thought I would do my top 10 list of the most significant NASCAR games for me personally. Now, I want to let you know right off the bat, I do not consider this a top 10 list for the best NASCAR games ever. I think the list would look a lot different if I did that, although some of these games would show up in both lists for me. But really, I want to talk about the games that had the most impact on me for one reason or another. So basically, I'm just going to be chiming in a lot of nostalgia and why certain games meant a certain thing to me. So don't mistake this list for like the top 10 best NASCAR games of all time. For one reason or another, all of these games kind of hold a special place for me for one reason or another, and I just wanted to clear that up so you don't misunderstand what this list truly is. So hopefully you can identify with some of these things, and of course I'll obviously want to hear from you in the comment section after this video is over. But don't want to waste any more time. We're going to go right into this list, and I'm going to start with number 10. Alright, starting off at number 10 in our list here is NASCAR 99. And ironically, I actually never owned this game, but for some weird reason, my cousin, who did not like NASCAR, did own this game for his Nintendo 64. So I remember going over there all the time and watching him play, and then I would start playing it a lot. And at the time, my favorite driver was the Skittles car, that 36 car. I always used that car. So it was such a cool time to always go to my cousin's house and play the game. I could not play it at home, so I was going over there as much as I could, as much as my mom would let me go over there. So, and for some reason, I remember being very good there at Indianapolis. It seemed like that was the track that I was most skilled at for some reason. So I would just get that 36 car of Ernie Irvan and win a bunch of races at the Indy 500, or sorry, the Brickyard 400. And so it was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed playing the game. Did a lot of multiplayer with my cousin. And after about the third try, I seemed to always beat him because he just really wasn't into the game that much. But I was getting to be a pretty big NASCAR fan at that time. The Skittles car was my first ever favorite car, and so always raced that car. It was a ton of fun to really get involved at Indianapolis with that Skittles car. I just remember those days a lot, winning a bunch of races at the Brickyard. So, but that's number 10. It's a good entry point, and good entry point that I was able to use my first ever favorite race car every time I played the game. But it was certainly a lot of fun, and I'll never forget those days going up there and playing that game. Slipping in at number 9 is NASCAR 98, maybe the original best game ever. It wasn't long after I had gotten used to the 99 game that I was able to save up enough money by doing odd jobs and working side jobs with my uncles that I was able to purchase my own PlayStation console, and this was the first game that I was able to buy. It was on discount because it was a little bit older, and so I rushed home, played this thing, and I would play it so much. But really the real reason why this game makes the list is because of, without question, hands down, the greatest NASCAR video game intro of all time. I don't think it will ever be topped. When you saw these images and you started hearing the song Flirtin' with Disaster, you knew you were in for a great time. I played this game as much as I could. In fact, I probably didn't do anything else if my mom let me do it. I wouldn't do chores. I wouldn't go play basketball outside. I wouldn't do anything. I just wanted to play this game because I'd finally had a kind of a fun console, and I finally had a game that I loved. So I remember, and I didn't play this game without watching all of the intro first. And also it's kind of cool that I started getting into NASCAR more and more, and if you remember, Bob Jenkins would always do those intros to the different tracks, and I think it's kind of funny now looking back. I would start to recognize when he would be at the wrong track introducing a track. So he would be at Charlotte, but he would be introducing Phoenix. Such a cool thing that I was able to notice those things. But Man, the memories for this game and that intro just simply cannot be topped. As far as just the nostalgia of that intro video, and just knowing that when you watch that video, you are going to have a great time with that video game, and I sure did. And I just played it so much and just enjoyed it a ton. So certainly couldn't do a list like this without including NASCAR 98. All right, moving on to number 8, and that would be NASCAR 2000. Now, in this game, I remember kind of thinking when I first purchased this game, and I did get it kind of brand new right when it released. By this point, I was a pretty big NASCAR fan. I just enjoyed the sport in general. And one of the things that I noticed right away is I feel like this edition of the game, EA Sports had really started to do a much better job with their menu screens. It was a lot more pleasant. As you can see here, this image of the John Deere car of Chad Little. It just looked like the overall menus were a lot better. The racing didn't feel like it was a whole lot different from the 1998 and 99 versions, but it was still a lot of fun. And as I was getting into NASCAR, I remembered that I just could not stand that 88 car. I kind of made a little replica of it here for this portion of the video, but I just wanted to beat Dale Jarrett so bad. And the other thing that really stands out for me in this game, this edition of the game, NASCAR 2000, if you've watched any of my other videos about the future of NASCAR gaming, I've actually used an image about how in the 2000 edition of the game they actually did interactive pit stops. And if you've watched any of my videos, you know how much of a proponent I am of active pit stops, like a quick time event, and they actually did that in this game, and it was without question my favorite part of this game. I loved going down pit road and then having to hit those sequence of buttons to make my pit stop faster. I remember winning a lot of races and losing some races based on my performance on that interactive pit stop. So a huge memory for me that I wish that they'd continued doing that throughout the EA games. And really, this game makes the list and is kind of over top of the 9 and 10 on the list, really because of that pit stop and just how cool it was to just interact with that and try to make that an actual part of the game itself, and you didn't just watch a video. So I just thought it was like the best part of the 2000 edition of the game. But we're going to move on to number 7 now. NASCAR Heat 3 makes it in at number 7, and I'm sure that is kind of a surprise for a lot of you, because you know a lot of the NASCAR gaming community, including myself, has been quite critical of 704 Games and the games that they released during their 5-year run, and really that doesn't really have anything to do with why this game made it to number 7. Honestly, the only reason it's here at number 7 is the fact that this was the game that was used to launch my online racing series. So the Go Fast e-racing series was born on NASCAR Heat 3, and there was some fun racing. Some of the tracks were pretty fun, but you know there was a lot about this game that was left to be desired, but really for no other reason than the fact that now we're in our 3rd year of the Go Fast e-racing series, and it was all started on NASCAR Heat 3. So it kind of holds a special place for me, just for the simple fact that now I'm a part of an online racing series where we have a website, and I post weekly updates, including highlight videos on that website. So everybody in the league can check out all of the information. And again, it all started on NASCAR Heat 3, and I think that just for that reason it deserves a spot in my top 10 of significant NASCAR video games. NASCAR 2003 lands number 6 on my top 10 list, and what's really weird about this is I actually only owned this game for about 3 months before the 2004 edition came out. I didn't always have the money to go out and buy these games. I always bought these games with my own money, but really I'd got my first ever job just a few weeks before buying this game, and so I bought it and I played it for a few months before the 2004 version came out, so I didn't really play it that long. However, I knew right away when I first played this game, just how much EA Sports had stepped up their game with their understanding of NASCAR, the sport. And so I knew right away how much fun this game was. I played it a ton in that really short 3-month period, and it was like playing an entirely different experience than anything that I had played up to this point. So I remember the almost the culture shock of just how much improved EA Sports had with this game. I actually never owned the 2002 version of NASCAR Thunder, so when I popped this game in, it was a huge and pleasant surprise at just how far EA Sports had come with their NASCAR games. Kicking off the top 5 is NASCAR 09. Now, outside of the racing being just a little bit wonky at times, I really liked EA's last installment of a NASCAR game. Yeah, I mean, it was clear that EA had started to phone in some of the things about the game, and they were clearly using a little less innovation. But I really played this game a lot. Now, maybe it was because of the announcement that EA was dropping NASCAR, but honestly, I played this game a bunch, mostly because, you know, when it came out, there was not another game to come out for like 4 years. So there was 4 years of playing this game's career mode, 4 years of this being all that we had. So I guess over those years, I really created a really kind of it created a kind of intimate relationship with this game. Certainly, a few little things about it that wasn't so great, but all in all, it was still a pretty good game. It had a pretty in-depth career mode. I know they had tinkered with that software of uploading special paint schemes. Now, I didn't really know how to do that, so I never really used that technology, but it was certainly a cool idea. I do remember making a pretty cool paint scheme on EA's paint booth. It was a Coca-Cola car, and I even remember the name of the scheme that I used. It was called Diablo. So it was a pretty cool paint scheme. I thought had a lot of fun racing that car. And again, just a 4-year-long relationship with this game. I think just that alone, probably for this nostalgia and just the memory of racing games in general, it certainly earns a pretty good spot here on my top 10 list. Alright, moving into the top 4, and it starts with NASCAR 2001. I will tell you these last 4 are separated by a razor's edge. The two things that kind of stick out to me about this game, I couldn't really think of much about the game itself that separated from others. I know that it was my introduction to PlayStation 2 graphics, which was pretty cool, but there wasn't anything special about the features of this game as opposed to games prior. But I actually remember at the time I was still a high school student living at home, and my mom would make me go to bed so I'd have to go to school the next day. And I just remember laying there waiting for her to go to bed herself. And it was at that point that I would quietly get up and turn on the game and then mute my 13-inch box TV, and I would play all hours of the night of this game. In fact, there were times that I would no more than turn the TV off after an epic night of racing, only to hear my mom walking close to my door to, quote, wake me up to get ready for school. Yes, I was sleepy all day at school, but it was totally worth it. Worth it enough to make it to number 4 on this list. NASCAR 14 is probably a surprise to some of you, as it lands here at number 3 on my list. Oh, you Technics, what a weird 5 years for NASCAR Gaming. It took until the 2014 version of their game to really make something worth talking about, and I'd make an argument that it's at least a respectable addition to NASCAR Gaming history. But one thing that they got so right was the paint booth, and that's really why it lands at number 3 on my list. I enjoyed the racing, and career mode was okay, but I loved the custom cars that I was creating. This is probably the only game where I spent less time racing than anything else. I've spent more time creating cars than I did actually racing the game. Man, super late hours spent perfecting product logos and paint schemes instead of winning a championship. I mean, I did win a few championships in career mode, but I was doing it using my sweet paint schemes. Like this Doritos car. Man, I was so proud of that Doritos logo. It took me like 3 hours to make that thing. But yeah, number 3 is all about the paint booth here. And I still fired up on the old Xbox 360 and tinker with paint schemes to this very day. So when you're playing a game that's that old and you're still getting after it, it's certainly worth a high spot on your top 10 list, and it certainly is that way for me. NASCAR Thunder 2004 hits number 2, and listen, before you cut off the video and unsubscribe to the channel because it didn't make it at number 1, first I want you to know I can see that this is probably the best overall NASCAR game ever made. It had everything: great racing, in-depth career mode, amazing pre-race presentation. It was visually spectacular for its time. Most of that still holds up today in a lot of ways. We could spend the rest of this video talking about the details, big and small, that made NASCAR Thunder 2004 so great. The thing I remember most is that when this game came out, I was only a year removed from graduating high school, so I was trying to work and take some college classes in the evening, so I had to spend the wee hours of the night mastering the greatest game of all time in NASCAR racing. Needless to say, I didn't sleep much in 2004 and 2005 during the days of this game. Again, it did have everything. It was amazing to play. Every aspect of the game was just fun. It had such a long quality of life. There was just so much about this game that was great. And so you might be wondering, well then why in the world is this game not number 1 for me? Obviously I'm speaking very highly of it. It clearly is the best game of all time, and that's true in the eyes of many. Well, there's a very specific reason why this game didn't make number 1, and I'll explain why as I'm talking about the number 1 game on my list. And it may not be a reason that any of the rest of you share, but again, like I said, this is a very specific list for me and my memories and nostalgia of NASCAR racing. So without any further ado, here is number 1 on my list: NASCAR 06 Total Team Control. Now I'm sure this particular game comes as a surprise to many of you. This game wasn't really special to a lot of people. It was okay. It was in the minds of a lot of people, but for me, this one has the fondest memories because at the time, in 2003, 2004, 2005, I didn't really have a favorite driver in NASCAR. After the Skittles car had disappeared, I really struggled to find a single favorite driver. I very quickly became attached to Joe Gibbs Racing, so I kind of rooted for the 20 car and the 18 car, but never one single driver. Tony Stewart, I struggled to continue to root for him as he got more involved in the series. I think his attitude just didn't strike me just right. Bobby Labonte was great to root for in the late 90s and early 2001 when he won his championship, but he kind of fell off very quickly and kind of became somewhat irrelevant in the sport, especially those last few years in the 18 car. So I really was looking for a favorite driver. And then in 2005, when they unveiled the 11 FedEx car, I just loved that car. I thought it was such a cool looking car, and I was really rooting for Jason Leffler, but obviously he didn't do very well. And as you know the history, they ended up putting Denny Hamlin in that car, and he's actually taken that team to some pretty amazing levels. And so for the first time, I really had a driver and a car that was singular and that I loved to root for that one car. And so when this game came out, it was for the first time ever, or really for the first time since 1999, that I had a single car that I loved. So I got on this game and played it a ton. I really loved playing the 11 car, even though it was Jason Leffler in the game, but that didn't bother me. I loved racing in the season mode and the championship mode. And I will say one feature that I loved about this game was that during qualifying, they actually had this live ticker at the bottom that was giving you like a real-time understanding of where your qualifying position was as you went through the qualifying lap. So I thought that was actually a really cool feature for the game. I haven't seen that too many times throughout the course of NASCAR gaming, and I just liked the way they laid that out. But I just remember playing this game so much, and again, racing that really cool looking 11 car, and for the first time in a long time I had my favorite driver. So I realized that maybe that's a kind of an odd reason to make a game #1, but I just love this game so much, and even in recent years I've bought a PlayStation 2 on kind of secondhand, and the first game I bought for it was NASCAR 6 Total Team Control. So I still jump on and play this game every once in a while, and absolutely I grab that 11 car, that Jason Leffler 11 car, and just play it all the time. So it was a bunch of fun. But that's my top 10 list of the most significant NASCAR racing games as I was growing up. And really thanks for joining me in this kind of trip through memory lane as far as racing video games are concerned. But now I really want to hear what your top 10 list is. So I hope you guys join in the conversation in the comments below. You can give me your top 10 or top 5 or whatever you want. Let me know what games meant the most to you as you grew up racing and the games that you enjoyed the most. But I hope you enjoyed this one, and have a good one.